Hey, what's going on everyone? Alex here, and I'm here to talk about Arcadian Atlas, which just came out today. Now, I've been playing this game for the past few weeks now on my Steam Deck, and I have quite a bit to say about it. But before anything else, let's set the stage here for a little bit. Arcadian Atlas is a tactical turn-based RPG in the same vein as Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Ogre Reborn, though based on my playthrough, it's got a lot more in common with the latter. And by that, I mean its SNES and PS1 releases. I'll get to that in a sec. Every unit in Arcadian Atlas is assigned a specific class, each with their own unique tree that lets you customize the kinds of skills and passives they'll learn. The game has multiple difficulty levels, so if you played Tactics Ogre Reborn and thought it was a bit too harsh in certain areas, Arcadian Atlas will be a more approachable experience. For the most part, progression through the game is done very similarly to Tactics Ogre Reborn, in that you have a map that you can explore and various nodes where battles take place. You're able to buy items and recruit new soldiers in certain sections. Everything you've been accustomed to in the aforementioned game is here. The battles are pretty similar as well, and this is the kind of tactical RPG that you'll have to choose the direction where you'll be facing. Needless to say, if you love Tactics Ogre Reborn and you simply want more, Arcadian Atlas has you covered from top to bottom. However, remember when I said that it's got a lot in common with the series' SNES and PS1 releases? Let's talk about that. One of the biggest innovations of Tactics Ogre Reborn, which was also found in its PSP re-release, is that its developers overlaid the battlefield onto a 3D frame, allowing you to flip between an overhead view of the map and a default isometric perspective. The reasoning behind this was to curb any sort of ambiguity caused by elevated terrain in the foreground, enabling you to see if there are any tiles hidden by the landscape. Since then, games have designed levels to prevent this ambiguity from happening, either by making the battlefield fully rotatable, a la Final Fantasy Tactics, or allowing you to tilt the battlefield and see over obstructions. Unfortunately, Arcadian Atlas has neither of these options, which became immediately apparent during the first battle. While you're able to place any combination of units prior to battle, enemy placement is hidden from you during this time. This is very similar to earlier versions of Tactics Ogre in that you weren't allowed to see how enemies are placed, turning this pre-placement of units into an altogether trivial matter. I understand how in games like XCOM, for instance, you're advancing and trying to uncover hidden enemies. But in Arcadian Atlas battles, the enemies are already in the field at the start. There's also the curious choice to start combat with the camera zoomed all the way in. Being able to see as much of the battlefield as we can is crucial for any type of strategy game, so having this be the default just sounds strange. Unfortunately, the ambiguity that Arcadian Atlas instills upon you makes you feel as though the game is hiding bits of itself from you, forcing you to be reluctant in engaging with its many systems. I think it's important for games to be able to give you the confidence you need to experiment with what it offers, because that's kind of like where the fun in these games are, is tinkering and playing around with these different systems and finding one that you absolutely love. But setting that aside, I do have a few things that I want to talk about with regards to its presentation. Arcadian Atlas' presentation is inspired by the Art Nouveau movement during the time of the Belle Époque. I'm an art major, so I know a lot about this era, and I could see from the color palette choices that this was indeed a huge inspiration. The thing with evoking such an era is that you're also locked into a specific kind of look that may not work if the presentation isn't nailed down. For example, because of the color palette, some details are just better than others, leading to some inconsistencies with the representation of its backgrounds. I think this is because it needs a little bit more variance in its color palette to really provide some variety and flavor to the game's visuals, a way to make certain things pop that catches the eye. There's also the subject of the jazz-inspired soundtrack, which to me took me out of the experience a bit more than the rest of its presentation. The Art Nouveau movement have Debussy's En Bateau and Eric Satie's Gymnopédie No. 1, which complemented the style of the artwork of the era to great effect. Arcadian Atlas, on the other hand, went with a jazz-laden soundtrack that feels a bit out of place. Now, I may understand why they chose this style of music for Arcadian Atlas. There's a track in Final Fantasy VI that, in the Pixel remaster, had a strong saxophone vibe. But notice that this track didn't really invoke a clear image of a specific genre of music. Comparatively, Arcadian Atlas' use of saxophones give more of a noir vibe than something that would belong in an Art Nouveau-inspired presentation. And to further this tonal whiplash, there's even an early theme that reminded me a lot of the Secret of Monkey Island games. That aside, I like the soundtrack. I think the compositions are great, and there are a few that I can actually say are my favorites. But that's removed from the game itself, because as I said, it just doesn't really match up too well for me. Okay, I know what you're thinking. With so many criticisms that have just been brought up here, is there anything in this game that makes it worthy of attention? Actually, there's quite a bit. As I said before, the pixel art for its characters is superb, and probably my favorite part of its presentation. The characters are expressive, and reminds me of the kind of expressions that Final Fantasy VI was able to eke out of its sprites. The character portraits are, to be expected, done in the Art Nouveau style that helps sell the idea of the era to us. Now, I would have loved to see the dialogue framed similarly to the mosaic tile portraitures we've seen of the time, as I think it would have further sold this era better. And while the combat has this funky thing where it just doesn't respect line of sight at all, I really like the fact that the tactical combat was very approachable. You just need to keep up with your skill tree and your equipment. This makes the seeming old school nature of Arcadian Atlas worth playing through, as it makes smart decisions on what things to keep and what things to leave on the table. And after doing several battles in the beginning, I got into a groove that made me just want to jump into every battle that's available, just so I can keep earning money to spend and rank people's skill trees up. Also, unlike other tactical games, Arcadian Atlas does something that I just absolutely love, which is for every unit that you bring into battle, everyone levels up afterwards. And any important story characters, regardless of their participation in battle, will also get leveled up alongside others. This avoids having to ensure that people get the last hit so that the experience point credit goes to them, and a variety of other weird rituals that you would do in other tactical games. So massive kudos for that. But above all else, my most favorite part of Arcadian Atlas is its storytelling. From the very get-go, Arcadian Atlas dialogue impressed me a ton, and I dare say that I actually liked it better than last year's Chained Echoes. Now, to be clear, I'm not talking about the overarching narrative, but rather the way that the game's writing infuses character into the dialogue itself. Arcadian Atlas also establishes very quickly that this tale is about two lovers, separated by different beliefs, in a war that threatens their relationship. This seeming infidelity towards the factions they have sworn fealty towards set the stage for an intriguing and memorable tale that grounds the prevailing stakes for each faction right down to its principal characters. Overall, while Arcadian Atlas' roots are definitely inspired by Final Fantasy Tactics and Tactics Ogre Reborn, the resulting game demonstrates an intimate understanding of the underlying systems for each game, and recognizing how small tweaks would benefit the entire package to make it more approachable. Granted, the game's presentation didn't strike a chord with me, as there's still a lot of reverence to the old that's still kind of kept in there, but its other parts, the ability to choose difficulty settings, a fantastic and gripping story, and addicting turn-based combat once you finally get the hang of it, are sure to please fans who are still high off of last year's tactical turn-based RPG renaissance, and are still looking for another game in the same vein that they can play. So if this sounds like you and you can forgive its faults, I think you'll enjoy Arcadian Atlas. Oh, and one more thing. The official Backlog Battle Boutique, yes, we're calling it that because of the alliteration, is now open. And you can get shirts like this one, hoodies, stickers, and even embroidered caps from there. I'll have a link to the store in the description below, as well as a link where you can purchase Arcadian Atlas. Thanks for watching, everyone.